Have you ever been lied to? Like for a long time. Santa Claus and the Tooth Fairy are popular lies, right? And children are devastated when they finally learn that their adults have been lying to them for years on purpose. I mean, there's heartbreak and tears. But then those same children grow up and they repeat the same harmless white lies to their own kids. All of this lying and pretending is normal. For my talk today, I want to take you on a journey to discover how I learned that I was being lied to and what I've learned about needing to uproot that lie to address racism. This is a picture of me and my family taken when I was 2 years old. As the only American-born child in a Nigerian family, I've always been a little different. Shortly after that photo, my family moved to Nigeria. And for a while, I grew up in a country where everyone looked like me. My skin color was the default. If you would have asked me to describe myself as I was growing up in Nigeria, I would have told you that I was a girl, how old I was, that I had a bold personality. My little sister would have told you that I was bossy. I say I was a natural-born leader. It wouldn't have occurred to me, though, to tell you that I was Black until we moved back to the United States. And I learned very quickly how very Black I was everywhere and eventually in the workplace. Imagine I offered you $1 million to accurately describe the race and gender of leaders of industry in our country. I'm talking governors, heads of media conglomerates, nonprofit execs, corporate CEOs. You would probably guess mostly male and white, and you would be right for the most part. It's 2020, and of all the Fortune 500 CEOs, only 7% are women. None of them are Black. Only 1% of those CEOs are Black, and none of them are women. 0% of them look like me. This gives you an idea of what I faced when I entered the workplace, where for over 20 years of my career, I only ever one time had another Black woman in my reporting structure between me and the top leader in that workplace. And these were workplaces that, for the most part, were striving to build a diverse and inclusive environment. Well, I'm tired of diversity and inclusion. D&I, yeah. Diversity and inclusion efforts have been popping up in workplaces for decades. But marginalized demographics are cynical because we keep seeing needles move and we're not seeing transformational change. Where are the results of diversity and inclusion? Billions of dollars have been spent in this industry. A recent Time magazine article asked a great question. Why are we spending so much to achieve so little? After my family moved back to the United States, I was 10, and so much happened as I was indoctrinated into a white-dominant culture and society. And with time, I learned the language to describe what I was experiencing. It was bias, discrimination, racism. Now, I'm naturally oriented to jump in and fix a problem. So by high school, I was in the Hands Across Campus Club, a prejudice reduction program at the school for the students. And then after that, I went to Kentucky State University, which is a HBCU, a historically Black college and university. During my visit, I recognized that there was something on that campus that I was craving, a break from racism. While I was at K-State, I began to do my own learning about the history of race in the United States And what I learned would later help me make sense of what was happening in the workplace. When I entered the workplace, I joined all the committees and councils, working groups, and task forces to try to push for change. And I was consistently disappointed when diversity and inclusion strategies that were rooted in equity would lose traction. I grew weary and began to feel like I was on the diversity and inclusion wheel going absolutely nowhere. I want to move that entire wheel forward. So why don't we? Why are we spending so much to achieve so little? It's because a big lie was told hundreds of years ago, and it's stuck. And we're not thinking about it or talking about it nearly enough. The lie was actually very simple. White people are better than all ethnic groups. That was pretty much it. White people and the way that white people did just about anything was better. For those that may not know why or when white became a thing that you could be, allow me to share a bit of information. Almost 500 years ago, in 1526, Spanish colonists were already here in present-day South Carolina with enslaved Africans. And by 1619, the British colonists were here in present-day Virginia, enslaving Africans, dispossessing the indigenous people, killing both if they dared to resist. They built considerable wealth and power and were soon threatened by rebellions by the poor. And they recognized that if the line of division was between the rich and the poor, that they were outnumbered. The color of skin was an effective way to divide and conquer, and to reduce the number of folks that were invested in toppling their power structure. So they created whiteness, and over time, selectively invited European immigrants to opt in to that whiteness and to reap the advantages that assimilation would provide. Black and brown people have been disposable ever since. And you only need to look at the news or scroll through your social media to see that Black and brown lives are still disposable by the systems in our country. It's 2020. Hundreds of years have gone by. And we are still grappling with the language to talk about this, talk less of the strategies to solve it. And I saw this in the workplace, where whenever any diversity and inclusion strategy got remotely close to decentering whiteness, it got shut down. It met barriers that maintained the status quo. Where are the results of diversity and inclusion? They are hampered by the big white lie. Most approved diversity and inclusion efforts are still operating within that lie that anything white is better. For months now, workplaces have finally recognized the movement for Black lives and are asking what they can do to meaningfully improve the experiences of Black and brown people at work. As you're listening, you might be wondering, okay then, lady, tell us, what should we do? How do we move that entire diversity and inclusion wheel forward? The first thing that we have to do, we gotta stop lying. Why are we so invested in pretending that this lie isn't real? The lie isn't true, but it is real. Internationally celebrated writer and poet Alice Walker wrote, "Healing begins where the wound was made." The wound is this lie that we don't even recognize anymore because it's not overt. It's not cloaked in a hood and a gown. So we don't call it white supremacy, even though that's what it is. And then we pour salt into the wound by saying things like, we're all equally free now, or that only merit determines who gets that promotion at work. Why can't we just be honest about this? Let's get honest about the root of racism being the creation and preservation of whiteness to advantage Europeans for a purpose, to maintain wealth and power. So that's the first thing we have to do. We have to stop lying. Second, we need to proactively root out the white lie in our lives. Rooting that out means figuring out if the white lie has somehow benefited you, your family, your school, place of worship, business, workplace. Third, we need to consistently reject the lie whenever it shows up in us, whenever it shows up in me and in you and in your families, your places of worship, schools, businesses, workplaces, and so on. If we do these three things, if we make them an ongoing practice, we stop lying, we root out the lie, and we reject the lie, we will discover the specific action steps that we need to take to make transformational change. So, why am I tired of diversity and inclusion? Because I'm tired of not addressing the big white lie. And I'm tired because so many markers of stability and success, not just in the workplace, but in our lives, are still largely predictable by race and by gender and sexual orientation and other identities. But I am daring to hope, especially after this historic year, that more of us are ready to uproot this lie from our ways of thinking and our ways of being. Now, uprooting something that has been at work for going on 500 years is going to take some time, and it is exhausting. It requires imagination and creativity. It requires courage. It's worth it. And maybe someday, when you look at a photo of the Fortune 500 CEOs, you will see many more people on that photo that look like me. Thank you.